productions a year, and hear what happens when the theater's not being used for theater. Well, they'll bring in concerts, or the choir will come in, or they do whatever. Musical act by fraternities or where. I said, well, what about those people? Couldn't they use some moving lights? Well, yeah, I guess so. So you got to look at all the different ways, although the theater department may only intend at using them as refocusable specials, and I can, for one thing, guarantee you when the young students get the hold of the moving lights, they won't just be refocusable specials. That might be what the professor has envisioned, but when the kids get a hold of them, they'll be flashing and swinging around, I guarantee it. Yeah. But, so you got to really analyze what it is and get as much information about what you're trying to do. Drives me nuts when I walk into theaters and schools and whatever where, an architect has dusted off a plan that they've done 27 times before like it's a cookie cutter. And nothing is a cookie cutter to me. Everything has specifics and what they're trying to do and very, subtle nuances of how things are different. Luckily, we have so many choices now. You can adjust for your console, for your lights, and so forth. 10, 15 years ago, we didn't have many choices. You didn't really have a choice. But now there's so many different lights. If you go to LDI now, it's all about, well, this light has feature A, B, C, and D, and this light has features this and that. Whereas it used to be, it was all flash and trash, rock show at LDI. Now it's all about individual features because there's so many different types and there's so many nuances in how they all work. Okay. So you got to look at it. I mean,
okay, as you said, let's why don't we, unless anybody has anything specific about consoles, I think we've covered that pretty thoroughly. We can always come back and answer some more things at the end, but why don't we move on to the moving lights portion, get into a little bit of that, because I think we've got some really interesting examples there in terms of some actual design examples. So, let's start looking there. The role of the moving light today, as we see from some of the questions, there's more and more venues that are moving lights into their more traditional rigs and expanding capabilities. It's one of the things that's driving the growth of the console market because people need to expand that capability as well. But why don't we just talk a little bit here about what kind of considerations when you're looking at a venue, when you're talking to people, what kinds of questions are you asking them? What kind of information are you looking to get in terms of feedback for their moving light needs?
I'll jump in. Even before I start looking at the 1,006 features that a given light might have, a big consideration for me is who is local to a given venue, whether it's a church or a theater, who can get them service quickly.
Okay.
And I know that's maybe looking at the question an opposite way, but if a church or a theater buys, a dozen $8,000 fixtures, but their vendor is 10 hours away, and they need help, they need to get more of the same, it may or may not be a good solution for them. A better solution might be something with a little bit fewer features, but where they can get service and more of the same quicker.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, one of the things that we run into a lot, and I think we see some of the moving light vendors really pushing that upper end of the marketplace with things that have so many bells and whistles that they're great in the really large tour environment that have big budgets and can afford to put those things in. But with the audience that we're generally talking with, whether it's our own dealers or our dealers' customers, the churches and schools and theaters, most of those things are, number one, way outside of their price range. Number two, a lot more complex than they would ever want to have to get involved with, and just way outside of where their needs and their budget are. Michael, anything that you've got that you want to add on that?
You've got 2 points. You've got a practical consideration, and that's things like how far are my lights from where I'm shooting? What is their purpose? You're talking watch lights. Well, don't forget, you know, moving lights are great, but you use the same formulas that you used when you were learning in school how to lay out a wash with your Fresnels. You've got to cover the stage, and you cover the areas you're lighting with your wash lights. First and foremost, lighting has to illuminate, and I don't care if you're doing a theater or a church or a rock concert or whatever. If you don't see the star, which might be, you know, Joel Osteen, or it might be, you know, Madonna, you're not, you know, you're getting fired or whatever. So
right.
You know, so that's first and foremost. So, you know, pick a moving light that does what you need it to do and not necessarily more. I mean, if you have a low ceiling, you don't need, you know, a Shogun, you know, or a Mach 3. You know, you might be able to just get away with a Mach 250 or a VL, you know, 2500 or whatever it's appropriate. And, you know, all those specifications are well documented, so you should be able to figure out how to cover your stage well. Then, you know, then you start putting on, you know, bells and whistles above that.
And I would agree 100% with what you're saying in terms of the function